This Minecraft map is illegal in 9 countries. But how? How can a collection of blocks inside a video game break the laws of some of the most oppressive and restrictive governments in the world? Because here, anyone can read banned articles and books exposing the corruption, collusion, and human rights violations from 9 of the most censored countries in the world. The Uncensored Library is a project created by Reporters Without Borders, with the goal of granting free and unfettered access to independent information for those who live in countries where information is censored, distorted, and covered up by its government. In the modern age, information is power, and governments that are corrupt use censorship to take that power away from the people. But this Minecraft map takes advantage of a loophole to give people access to information they would otherwise never see. To governments, Minecraft is just a game, and downloading this world or accessing it on a server isn't the same as downloading a banned book. That is, until you take a closer look at the books inside the library and see the truths this library exposes. The library is divided into 9 halls dedicated to some of the most censored countries in the world, including Russia, Egypt, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, Belarus, Mexico, Eritrea, Brazil, and Iran. We start in the central room, a room so massive there are clouds floating indoors. It contains a central book that lists 180 countries ranked by their level of press freedom. Clicking on a country will teleport you to another book that gives a brief explanation about the state of censorship and freedom in that country. Next is a country where a single social media like can land you in jail. Russia. The centerpiece in this room is the Data Kraken, symbolizing Russia's efforts to gain complete systematic control over the country's internet. The articles in this room talk about the Russian government's ability to blacklist any website without a court order or due process. Every year, dozens of Russian citizens are thrown in prison for their online activity. Even a single like on the wrong post can result in a lengthy jail sentence. The private information of every Russian citizen has to be stored on servers inside the country that are controlled by the Russian government. And, under orders from President Vladimir Putin, it has become mandatory for all Russian electronics to come pre-equipped with spyware so the government can monitor its citizens' activities. Building the Uncensored Library was one of the biggest collaborative projects in Minecraft history. The library and surrounding scenery is made of over 12.5 million blocks, and it took 24 builders from 16 different countries over 250 collective man-hours to build. The folks at Reporters Without Borders even hired internationally acclaimed design studio Blockworks to consult on the project. Next is the Vietnam exhibit, home to the Labyrinth of Truth, that symbolizes the Vietnamese government's growing efforts to make it difficult for its people to reach independent information. Every media outlet in Vietnam takes orders directly from the Communist Party that runs the government, meaning the only independent information people can get comes from individual reporters and journalists, who are facing rising levels of persecution, including harassment by plainclothes police officers, as well as jail and expulsion from the country. The exhibit gives players access to banned articles written by Nguyen Van Dai, a Vietnamese human rights lawyer who was sentenced to over 20 years in prison by corrupt government officials. Next is the Mexico exhibit. This exhibit is made up of shrines honoring 12 Mexican journalists who tragically lost their lives to cartel violence. Their names are Jorge Vasquez, Neveth Jaramillo, Santiago Barroso, Rafael Manriquez, Telesforo Enriquez, Rogelio Perez, Mirsolava Velducia, Javier Cardenas, Norma Sarduza, Francisco Diaz, Omar Mascareno, and Jesus Rodriguez. The books at each altar explain each reporter's lifetime dedication to freedom and information, as well as the horrible ways in which they lost their lives, most of which are far too sensitive for YouTube. The exhibit explains that the Mexican cartel and the Mexican government are deeply intertwined. The cartel has complete control over most government officials through bribes, blackmail, and threats. This means the cartel has free reign, and they use this power to control the flow of information and take power away from the people. The Egyptian wing displays the tipped scales, symbolizing Egypt's draconian laws that impose long prison sentences for anyone who criticizes or protests against the government. Egypt is one of the world's biggest jailers of journalists, with many being held in detention for years without being tried or charged with a crime. In Egypt, the media is controlled completely by the government. Over 500 major websites are blacklisted in the country, including Mada Masar, a news outlet whose reporters can't even take credit for their own work for fear of retaliation. Many of their articles can be read at the center of this room. Very similar in theme is the Saudi Arabia exhibit, featuring a massive obsidian cage representing the fact that Saudi Arabia is in the top 3 of countries with the most journalists imprisoned. Independent media is outlawed in Saudi Arabia, meaning the flow of information to its citizens comes directly from the government, who massively audits and censors the news. The books in the middle tell the story of Jamal Khashoggi, a reporter who had to flee the country after denouncing the actions of the Crown Prince. Housed in its own greenhouse adjacent the library, we find Belarus. Belarus is a developing nation whose television and print media are completely controlled by its dictator, Alexander Lukashenko. The fact that Belarus is a developing nation means that free and uncensored information is even more critical to its people. And its dictatorship means that most journalists actually have to report by proxy from somewhere outside of the country where it's safe. The articles in this room are written by Chapter 97, a news outlet constantly censored and impeded by the nation's government. Next is Brazil, where you can see a book threatened to be crushed by a judge's gavel. This art piece is meant to represent Brazil's practice of restricting the press using lawsuits. The corrupt justice system in Brazil is used to quickly accuse, try, and sentence journalists who report on government corruption. And the articles explain the government's attempt to foster a sentiment of hate towards journalism in the Brazilian people. Next up is Eritrea, whose exhibit is located under the giant statue of the triumphant fist holding a pen. Eritrea is ranked last on the Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. In Eritrea, all independent media is strictly outlawed. The only source of independent information comes from a radio system broadcasting into the country from France. The government of Eritrea has created a near total information blackout for its people, a situation that in the modern era is a clear and direct violation of basic human rights. The last of our 9 countries featured in this project is Iran. Iran is one of the most repressed countries in the world, both in terms of its laws and its control over the media. The media in Iran is completely controlled by the religious government, meaning only information that is deemed acceptable by religious leaders and the country's supreme leader is released to the people. Like other countries in this library, Iran is one of the biggest jailers of journalists, and the government's actions have been condemned by the United Nations and just about every human rights organization in the world. And those 9 countries are just some of the places where people's right to free information is missing. The Uncensored Library and Reporters Without Borders are dedicated to continuing to make information available to any person who seeks it. When the library was first constructed, it only had 5 exhibits. It now has 9, and there are plans to continue to expand it. But you can help too. Every time this world is downloaded and posted in any corner of the internet, it becomes more and more accessible for those living in countries that try to limit their informational freedom. So, if you feel the urge to help, you can download this world on the Reporters Without Borders website and share it anywhere people might be on the internet. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, you learned something new about the Uncensored Library project. And if you did enjoy, please drop a like and subscribe. Like always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.